公民总主笔。
Welcome to Residence Messenger program on Taipei Broadcasting Station. I'm your host, Ross Darrell. Today, our very special guests are Naseem Chen and Tom Curry from the Taiwan Wine Academy. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you, Ross.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ross.
We're going to talk about studying wine in Taipei,
Studying wine.
what it takes to be a wine lecturer and a wine student, and what to drink over Christmas and the New Year's, and what to study in 2021. But before we get into the details of the Taiwan Wine Academy, let's learn a little bit about our guest. Tom, where'd you grow up?
I was born in Vancouver, British Columbia, and I grew up in Vancouver. But I left when I was still a teenager and to become a professional sailor. I was a sailboat captain for 20 years, traveled around quite a bit.
Around the Pacific or the whole world?
The whole world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
there are lots of places I haven't been, of course.
and why did you give up the sailing? Because that sounds a lot better than sitting in a big city or living in a big city like Taipei. Being with the oceans and the fish.
That's a difficult question.
It's a very good question.
You need about 2 hours to answer that properly. But I always had a kind of bipolar desire, the desire to be far away from everything and the desire to be in the middle of everything. So I spent 20 years more or less away from everything, and then the next 20 or more have been right in the middle, which is good. I love being in the heart of the city. And I love literature and poetry and art and wine, of course.
Well, was that a childhood dream to be a sailor? Or something you came into a little later?
I think it's a predilection. I think it was in the cards for me. No one in my family was particularly interested in it, but I got hold of a book when I was about 8, and I just went from there.
Great. And Naseem, how about you? Where'd you grow up?
I just grew up in Taiwan. In Taoyuan, I'm really Taiwanese. I think I'm like the 7th generation of Taiwanese. And I don't consider that I am Canadian at all.
But you spent some time living in Canada, didn't you, Naseem, with Tom?
Actually, yeah, kind of like 8 to 10 years of life in Canada. And I think it does help me to build my passion and knowledge.
You got your first diploma in Canada.
Yes, I went to wine school in Canada.
And since you're sitting here with Tom, I'll put you on the spot and ask you a difficult question. What do you miss most about Canada?
The smell of air.
Yeah, you can't get that in Taiwan?
No. It's a crispy
yeah.
smell. Yeah, and just so transparent. I guess it's the humidity.
Here in Taiwan.
Yeah.
How about you, Tom? What do you miss about Canada?
I think I miss sailing. I really, the best thing about living in British Columbia always for me was that around Vancouver and up and down the coast is well protected water, so it's really easy. It's a forgiving place to enjoy sailing.
I guess that indicates you're so busy teaching wine that you don't even have much time to sail anymore.
Well, I did teach sailing in Taiwan in the 90s for a couple of years.
The very first sailboat in Taiwan.
Yeah, we had, yeah.
Is it right?
Well,
what became of that boat?
I don't know. I guess it's still around.
I hope it is.
Don't know.
It's a 智利号.
Yeah,
I remember 智利号.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. You remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Where was its home port?
Well, Feichuiwan. We were up there, and eventually, but the boat came over from Hong Kong. I did a refit on it in Kaohsiung with the owners, and then we sailed around. I think we might have been the first sailboat to do a port-to-port journey in Taiwan. It was very difficult. They wouldn't let us leave.
Yeah, the authorities weren't too thrilled with this kind of activity back in the day.
Definitely groundbreaking stuff.
90s.
And we had to get some high official that I never met to intervene just to get us an exit permit so we could sail down to Kanding. And then we stayed in Kanding for a few months.
And most of your crew did not know how to swim, I guess.
That's also true. And they all got seasick too. They were, so.
Well, why don't you load them up with some wine?
Yeah, well, that doesn't help with seasickness, actually. I don't know if you
eating something harder.
You need to. I would rather have a seasick crew member than someone who's drunk or drugged, actually. I mean, a little puking once in a while, it's not as bad as somebody falling overboard because they've lost their balance,
Tell us about the pathway to becoming wine educators. Where does someone go, not just to take a class and study like they go to the Taiwan Wine Academy now, but how do you become an educator in wine?
I can speak to that. I think that in Naseem's case is a classic case of being inspired right from the beginning. The very first course she took in Vancouver was from an inspired and inspiring teacher named DJ King.
Yeah, my dear teacher, yeah.
Yeah, and she was just so full of enthusiasm for the whole walk of life that Naseem got the bug and just kept on doing it and never stopped.
I also have to say all my classmates, for me, they were like the most friendly people in Canada.
I thought all Canadians
Just kidding.
Polite,
Yeah,
polite.
yeah.
Friendly,
I am from wine and restaurant business. We just want to share. That's it. And I feel like, wow, those group of people is just amazing. Sharing wine all the time. Yeah.
But you were also the instigator there too.
But Tavia, we're familiar with how someone might become say a school teacher, for example, go to university, get a master's degree, maybe. But how does someone become a wine educator?
It's a very good question.
Well, of course, it helps if you're in the business already, but you need to get and you can teach. Lots of people teach without having any qualifications. Anybody can do it, but to be qualified, you need to follow one of the recognized international programs. And there are several, but there's really only one left that has any significant curricular path that leads to being an instructor, and that's the Wine Spirit Education Trust in the UK. They're all over the world. They're the biggest by far, the best organized, and they're a nonprofit organization also. Though they make a lot of money, they just have to spend it. Right?
Yeah.
So you start off as a beginner, and there's an intermediate and a level 3 advanced course, then there's a diploma,
yeah.
and then you take an educator training program, and if you pass that, then you can teach.
Yeah, but for me, I think that's actually quite a minimum.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You
for
pass
sure.
those exams, just minimum. Like Tom was saying, that you should, or I think you must have some experience in the industry.
Very true.
Yeah. So.
You mean most people who pursue that path would have already had some food and beverage or wine,
or they get it on the way.
Being educated.
Some people just start doing their wine travel. So the whole thing about I like to compare wine knowledge to scuba diving. You wouldn't start off your scuba diving career by going to the Great Barrier Reef and jumping on a 1,000-meter coral wall, right? You would study in the pool first, and wine classes are a bit like pool sessions for scuba diving. If you do that, but the reason
wait, but I got to interrupt you there. You don't jump into like a pool of wine, though, do you?
Right. You take the wine course. You take the wine course before you go traveling. You need to go to Burgundy or to go to Rioja or to go to Argentina, to Mendoza to taste wine. It would be a waste of energy to go there without knowing anything about what's there. So you need to do the homework. You need to do the pool sessions.
Now we actually have students that
I've never seen a pool of wine.
They travel first and then they realize, oh my God, they were drinking such good wine. I did not know
They
until
didn't know what they were drinking.
They came to the class, yeah.
And the inverse is often true, that people take a few courses and they become inspired to go and actually see those places. And once you've seen those places and drunk the wine in the winery, it changes your perception of it forever. And that's really the point and the objective of the whole thing is not so much to become an educator, but to become an accomplished traveler. The other good thing about wine travel is that it takes you off the beaten path for tourism, right? Unless you're in Napa. Napa is like Disneyland, but everywhere else, sorry.
They say that.
Yeah, they say that themselves. But tourist destinations are not often wine destinations.
What do you mean by that?
Like wineries in the Douro Valley, the Douro Valley in Portugal, right? Unbelievably beautiful, steep slopes going up to, and it's
the terraces,
and the river winding through, and terraced vineyards everywhere, and people very kind and generous, and fabulous food, and hardly any tourists really.
Yeah, you kind of get to see like the like what Tom was saying, like you get to eat the best food. You don't really need to go
You don't
to
have to
those,
try too hard.
like
Yeah.
tourist restaurants, yeah.
And as educators, though, and as sort of hybrid characters in the media, also, we have an easy time getting invitations to go to visit wineries, and we like to do that. We have done it. Been to lots of different countries, the Azores.
Yeah, and those are stories that students really like,
Mm.
and you can apply those stories into teaching,
Mm.
and then they can really kind of like get a point, not just a theory, because we combine all those real travel stories, and also they can feel the winemakers, what they are thinking, what they are making, Yeah.
That's a really good point. And to speak again to the Wine Academy, we're not a certificate pump. Our mission is not to get people through these tests. We always consider the tests to be bumps in the road. That the real mission, the real purpose of the exercise is to raise your awareness of geography and climate and wine is a part of all that, and wine is a means to visiting unique places in the world.
What kind of person is a successful or a good wine educator? So we think about like you go to cooking school. We have like those stereotypes you always see in the movies, like the cooking teacher might be like really strict and getting mad at the students who don't break the egg correctly. But what about for wine? I mean, what kind of personality? What kind of person is a good wine educator?
Well, I'm a bit prejudiced, but Naseem is the best wine educator of all. but I
Okay, I have to confess, it's not about you are a scholar or you know a lot about wine. It's about if you can communicate with students. And it's also about if you care about your students and also make sure students understand, appreciate. I mean, I have to combine very kind of like strict theory with their lifestyle, their life experience. So what we do is that we want to have students to have experience and learning about wine at the same time. They are actually tasting the wine for pleasure, for their sense that, oh, I really feel that. But instead, maybe some educators like to throw out how much knowledge they know, but students just get lost.
Yeah, you can express it very simply. There are some wine lecturers whose mission is to promote themselves, to make their public image greater. And there are other wine lecturers whose mission is to reach students and help them to learn more. And we draw the line pretty distinctly between
Our
those two.
focus, actually students are the star.
Yeah.
I'm just helping them.
Yeah. And the student community is the point of the whole
community,
exercise. We were saying before, we were talking about advanced studies and it's the people you study with who remain with you for the rest of your life.
We just came from a students' party before the show.
But why in Taipei, though? Did you think about opening a wine academy somewhere else, or this was the place where there was a need for it, or is there some other motivation?
Naseem was the first person to teach about wine in Chinese.
I mean, certificate program.
Internationally recognized certificate programs. Yeah, she was the first, and very soon after, like within a year or two, other places sprang up. Hong Kong was going earlier, but only teaching in English, and so she was the first to teach in Chinese. Some years earlier, when we were living in Canada, and she got into wine, we realized that there was this market vacuum in Taiwan, and there was a huge opportunity there for us. And she came back first with her suitcase going from
I would
hotel
not
to
think
hotel.
about opportunities. All I thought was that I have such good experience in Canada and US. My teachers were fabulous.
Yeah.
So I just want to bring the same experience back to Taiwan. And I realized that at that time, students, they had to fly to Hong Kong and took 2 days program and then came back to Taiwan and then went back to take exams. So they did not actually get to know their teacher and their classmate.
Indeed.
So I thought, I'm going to create something like what I have in Canada and US. I still talk to my teacher, I still talk to my classmates.
Yeah.
Did you think about teaching other beverage appreciation or
Well,
wine?
The Wine Academy, we have.
We have Taichung and Hsinchu and Tainan and Kaohsiung.
And we have sake and beer and spirits classes also.
But wine is the most popular, or the
Well,
equally popular
it was the
now?
first. But our beer program is really doing well. Our spirits program,
too.
sake is amazing. Sake drinkers, can I say this? They seem to be a little different from wine drinkers. They drink a lot.
They are very capable.
They're very capable, yeah. And the sake program is a huge success, actually, and especially now with rules changing, taxation rules changing, and the Taiwanese people being more open about their interests in Japanese culture than they were, say, 20 or 30 years ago. I think that's a big rising star on the drinks horizon. But we never thought about teaching coffee because there are too many other people teaching it. And
a lot of my students are teaching coffee. I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah, and the same with cocktails, right? There are cocktail programs, bartending programs are in every college in the country, so there's really no place for us there.
What makes for a good sake or the other beverage educator? Is it the same kind of personality, the same things we were talking about, makes for a good educator for the other types of beverages as well? Or is there something really unique to some of the other beverages?
I could talk about Michael O, who was the founder of the sake program.
Sake
yeah, he's an amazing guy, and he has unbelievable energy. I still can't figure out when he sleeps. When does the guy sleep?
And he speaks perfect Japanese, and he also speaks English.
Yeah,
and of
perfect
course
English.
he's Taiwanese.
He lived in New Zealand, lived in Japan, and
he's a chef.
And he and Naseem actually recognized the potential of the Sake Society International (SSI) program very early on. But what I want to say is when they implemented it here in Taiwan, they used a model that we were already using in a wine program to make the sake program more interesting and more full. But Michael translated the textbook from Japanese into traditional Mandarin. We had it long before they had it in English. So it's a great program, and he's a really terrific instructor. We have other people teaching it now.
Is it important to know the language of where some of you mentioned earlier? You mentioned Portuguese wine, for example, or sake. Is it really important that the instructor speak the language from where the product comes, or is there enough information?
Doesn't hurt. That's for sure. Well, English is the lingua franca, right? And wine education was very Anglo-centric until quite recently, or Francocentric. Wine itself was Francocentric.
We got to be respectful to.
No, but wine itself is still Francocentric, I think, in the world. And they say themselves that for another 100 years they will be the benchmark for, Bordeaux will be the benchmark for wine. But wine education really began in England. I think it's fair to say that because England doesn't have any wine of its own. It was always a wine tasting culture, not a wine drinking culture. Everybody in France thinks they know everything already, so there's not much you can teach them.
I better stop you there before you say the French.
They will agree with me. They'll agree with me.
This is a great time to take a break. You're listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Welcome back to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Our guests today are Tom and Naseem from the Taiwan Wine Academy. We were talking about who becomes a good educator for wine and other beverages. But take us back to the early days of opening the academy here in Taipei. What were some of the challenges you faced during the startup and the early days of operating the academy?
In the beginning, it's like you want to kind of convince people, say, this is a really good to come to take wine program. At that time, there's no wine education program. Most of the activity, I would say wine activities are sales oriented.
Yeah, you go to a wine store, they open some bottles, you sample
and then you buy wine. Right? And it's all about talking about, this winery, that winery, this brand is great. But my job was to teach people how to appreciate wine in more kind of like, how would I say that? Subjective
No,
Yeah.
general term.
Yeah, general term, right? So in the beginning, I would say it's really funny that when I try to buy wine from importers, they don't know who I am.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea. So I spend a lot of time to introduce myself and to kind of like negotiate, say that this is an education program, I want to buy wine for education. But the funny thing is that students that actually want to come to take classes, they are curious. So it was probably not much of a challenging to get students in, but more to convince industry people to know about this. And
Give us a
eventually, they all came to the program too.
No, and I think it's fair to say also that at the beginning, a very large percentage of the people who took our courses were industry people who had a lot of experience but had no credentials to support their experience. And so, especially in those early classes, I remember the list, the student lists were like, whoa, these people have got like 10, 20 years of experience in the wine business and they're coming to take an entry-level course. So what are we going to do?
They want to learn about the system.
Yeah.
And they want to learn about what is tasting, not just about grape varieties or wine region.
Yeah,
but it's a tasting.
And like
system.
me, I was a journalist long before either of us got into wine, and I interviewed winemakers, 30 years ago, and it was easy. You just tell me what to say, and I'll write that. I'm a journalist. I'll write whatever you want. But when you actually start to make your own judgments and create your own evaluations and really begin to understand what's in the glass, it's a whole different game. And especially in the industry, people whose job is or who want to have the job of selecting wine really need to be able to tell, first of all, whether the wine is any good and then whether it's worth the price they're asking for it. And so when you get to be as good as Naseem is now, there are a lot of people who listen to what she says and she'll say, I think you should have this one. They'll go right out and buy it. And we teach that too. People who get through the levels can make their own judgments. And can I say this? I have two sources of pleasure from wine. One is the wine itself, and one is the bargain. You get good wine at a good price, then you have double satisfaction. Anybody can get good wine if you're willing to spend, a gazillion dollars, right? Or at least it might be good.
Good wine doesn't mean bargain. Good wine just means that you can always find very interesting region with the cost that is reasonable, but it's not because of the marketing driven.
Right. You have to get through that mist to the reality of what's in the bottle.
Tom, you mentioned earlier some of the bureaucracy you encountered when you were sailing around Taiwan. What about setting up a wine academy, though? Was that something the authorities were a little confused about, or how you should be regulated as do you need a liquor license, or just a school, or what happened in those early days when
the early days were pretty straightforward. I think the early days, no one really
there was no regulation,
but we got noticed eventually, and we've had our share of opportunities to explain ourselves to the government.
Do share a good story, Tom.
Well, I started to tell you about the visa waiver program, which works for the computer industry and so on. Business people are allowed to come in without.
Sure, you're coming for a business trip.
Yeah. Well, we want to have the best educators abroad, right?
Yeah.
So we have to figure out how to apply for visa for those educators.
Yeah, and they actually made a law for us.
Yeah, at that time there was no how to say category.
There's no category. There's no box to check for the wine educator.
But eventually they created one. Yeah.
So you just got the authorities. You brought up some wine. And
that's the shortest way to say it. No, actually, there were several judges who were already students of Naseem's, right? So she just called them up and said, "Hey, I got a problem."
No, it's not like that.
almost like that. But it was good. And it needed to be done anyway. It didn't just affect us; it affected the entire industry. And there's one friend of ours who canceled an event. It cost him $50,000 US to cancel these events because of the trouble we were having.
Category
educator. So how about in 2020 with COVID-19, and of course here in Taiwan, fortunately our situation is so much better than most places around the world. But at times the first half of the year, for example, schools, you're supposed to have social distancing, and instructors, even university or high school, are supposed to wear masks. How did this all affect your business in the Wine Academy?
Well, you know,
Since you're supposed to be drinking a little bit.
I don't really want to. I don't want to brag. It's very tempting to brag about Taiwan and how fortunate we are to be here and not other.
We are fortunate.
We are very fortunate to be here, and things are very much different here. But if you speak about the beginning, like back in March and April, I guess, when everyone was really scared, and there were a few community cases still being ferreted out. And so what we did is we followed the government regulations to the letter. In addition, we installed far infrared lights in our ceilings and in the toilets, so that we zapped the room every night to sterilize the room. And we had
spacing too.
We did spacing. So we reduced the size of our classes by half, and so people could be spread out. And there was a period of a couple of weeks where everybody sat through the whole class with their masks on. And then when they wanted to drink, they kind of lifted up the bottom of the mask.
That was very challenging. I have to say, I think this is the most challenging.
But that's challenging for you as the instructor, or challenging for the students?
For students, I mean, it's so distant, you know.
But they didn't last very long, and then, you know, you probably know that because it's so easy here, we have free pratique here. Lots of Taiwanese people, anybody who has the ability, is coming back to ride it out here in Taiwan. And so somebody estimated there are 1.8 million Taiwanese people who normally would be somewhere else who are stuck here, and they don't have anything better to do than take a wine course. So you know, it's affecting. Once we were able to pack the rooms again, the rooms are all packed.
What about going into the winter months and the government, you know, imposing some new, you know, more mask wearing again?
I don't think it's there. I haven't seen any actual rules about that. We still have a QR code that everybody has to sign a waiver before they can come in. I think that I'm not the government, but I think in Taiwan it's most important that you keep a record of where you are. So if you do turn up with the virus, the people who are looking for anybody else who might have been exposed can go back through your trail and see exactly where you were and go and test all those other people. And we're following that very closely. We don't have social distancing in the classroom anymore. Haven't for several months.
Oh yeah, as you say, yeah, we're very fortunate, and it was certainly worth bragging about. You said the classes are popular because a lot of people have come back to
about
Taiwan.
A quarter of the students are
especially
expats
being a lot of students.
Generally speaking, who are the students? What's the kind of person who takes a class at the Taiwan Wine Academy? Are they full-time, you know, someone who has a job during the day? What kind of industries do they tend to be in?
We tend to run programs in pairs. We tend to run a weekday program for industry people and a weekend program for consumers. And they fill up pretty evenly, we find. The best days for industry are Monday and Tuesday.
When you say industry, you mean people who are actually in the wine business?
Yes, that's what I mean. Restaurants, beverages. And they fill up pretty evenly. It's odd. Sometimes the weekday program will have way more people than the weekend. It's really difficult to say. But because all of our promotion is through social media, I don't think we've ever bought a flat plan ad since the beginning. We've always been Facebook, Line, Google, you know. So the demographics of our students are people who use those media, right? So 22 to 40, sort of, with a bell curve, fattest around 32. Something.
Well, why aren't there more people over 40? You know, I'm a little biased because
don't know.
I'm over 40, so
yeah, me too. We're all over 40 here. Maybe not.
Why is it? You know, why is that kind of bell curve ending at 40?
Wow, there are several possible answers to that, and I don't think we have a real answer. There are people over 40, lots. I mean, it's just that
a lot of company owners they even mention their name.
Yeah, that's right. They sneak in because the Taiwan wine culture is a little bit. We have a lot of
celebrities too.
Celebrities too.
I was like, okay.
There are people who don't want to be seen in public. They don't want to be acknowledged in public. That happens quite a bit. I think that. Those people, the wine drinking culture that's over 50, say, is actually from a previous generation. A lot of them made their money in other places in Europe or in the United States, and they're collecting wine and buying wine through their own avenues, and they have their own gatherings. We are not invited to those gatherings. I don't know. We don't even really know who those people are. It's all the importers have their most valuable asset is their client list, right? And they keep them close to the chest. So the people who come to take our courses are either, refugees from those groups, or they're young people who are. I mean, it's a place to make new friends. People make a lot of new friends. It's astonishing.
Yeah.
We have groups who still meet every month that met for the first time.
2009.
2009. They're still getting together every month.
That's a core value of Wine Academy.
And that is. Yeah.
It's a community.
And I think that it's a core value of wine.
And also they really get to know friends they probably won't be able to meet in their own life.
Yeah, who needs those dating apps and things like that? Just take a class at the Wine Academy.
Yes,
Exactly.
Speaking of classes, can you tell us a bit in our remaining few minutes? What are some of the more popular classes, or what are some of the classes you would recommend to people that are going to be available in the next few months, and especially for people who are not so familiar with wine or taking a wine class? What would you recommend?
I recommend an entry-level course, a one-session course. Like you want to find out about the Wine Academy. You want to find out who we are and how we roll. So it's best not to overcommit at the beginning. I think we have lots of commitment programs. 12 hours, 36 hours, 60 hours.
I would say actually the beginners class, the best one would be WCT level 1.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's 12 hours. It's 12 hours, okay, 4 sessions.
Yeah.
But you are totally beginners, but then you feel like you actually learn something and make friends in 12 hours.
Very true.
Yeah,
But the reason I'm kind of, it's a sneaky recommendation to tell people to come to a one-session course, because usually they're a little bit more technical, and most of the people there will have some experience. So what happens to a real beginner who comes to one of those, they go, ooh, I really don't know anything.
So you better go, that's true.
Level 1. But level 1, she's right. Naseem is absolutely right. Level 1 is our most successful program by far. We've
designed for beginners.
Thousands of people through
and teaching you, actually, I have to say, how to serve wine, what's the best temperature for wine, how to pair food with wine is all very practical.
International grape varieties.
And those courses are offered in Mandarin or in English or both?
Mandarin.
Mandarin mostly.
But you can take the exam in English if you want.
But we can switch to English if necessary. I do have students speak English speakers.
Yeah, all of our teachers are fluent in English too. But we haven't had much success with English language only programs. It turns out that there are not so many people as you might think in Taiwan who only speak English,
which is a good thing.
and that when people sign up for the English program, we discover that most of them also speak Chinese, so there's really no need for them to be in an English program. So, for example, our WSET Level 3 program, which is quite advanced, the first professional qualification. Well, it was only recently offered in Chinese at all. It used to be only in English, and we ran it for years with.
I translate.
Chinese, and the examination was all in English. But Naseem would translate for our instructor, who was from Great Britain, and now we offer the program in traditional Chinese, and people can take the examination in traditional Chinese. But our instructor is completely bilingual, and she translates for herself. Flips back and forth. It's quite amazing to see her do it. None of us here can do it. And that's a really good course, but it's an advanced course. The level 1 is really the ice-breaking course for sure, but it is 12 hours. It's 2 full days.
It's very happy 12 hours.
Over several weekends, is that how it's structured?
Yeah, a couple of weekends.
I would say 2-3 weekends. Yeah.
And how far in advance do people need to sign up, or are you booked for months into the future that people need to sign up now and for months later, or courses are opening up on a constant basis?
They are.
Yeah.
We have 3 or 4. I can't remember.
Beginners classes per month.
Every month.
So it's very free. They can sign up depending on when they have time.
Yeah. And where they are, we have classes in Taichung and Kaohsiung, Hsinchu, Hualien.
Throughout the country.
Yes. So less regularly, but I think it's it's easy to sign up. Level 2 sometimes can be difficult to get into because it fills up so quickly. And we now have more teachers teaching level 2, so it's a bit easier.
And for the beginners, what should they expect when they go to the class as far as the amount of wine that they might actually drink during the class?
Well, we encourage people to spit right from the beginning. If you're going to be a wine professional, you don't want to swallow the wine. You swallow the wine, you get drunk, and you can't work anymore. So you know, but no one listens to us. They drink it anyway,
and they still pass the class.
Yeah,
they don't listen to you.
Sure. They, you know,
you really are a nice teacher.
No, we are very serious about exam. Exam
is very serious. But I think first of all, it is sommelier culture. So spitting wine is part of it, and people say, oh, it's a waste, and you know, but it's not true. You're there to evaluate the wine, not to get loaded.
Yeah, they can actually. I guess it's very practical, but it also can. We do tasting, like you can learn the different characteristics of 12 different grape varieties, so you get to taste those different varieties and get the aroma and the taste, feel the acidity, feel the mouthfeel.
That's a very good point. You know, because you could go your whole life and never have an opportunity to taste so many different similar wines together to figure out what the differences really are. You know, if depending how good your memory is, you know, if you drink one once a week, say, you'll never get anywhere. But we're running a champagne program in March where we're going to have all kinds of champagnes, the 3 basic grape varieties in Champagne: Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Pinot Meunier. And you know, I never knew how to tell them apart until I started studying.
And they also have to spit out the champagne, Tom?
We recommend that
there's a wine I could get, but the champagne too?
Well, champagne is wine.
We have spit buckets.
Yeah, we have spit buckets. Yeah.
That's the thing. A lot of my students have it. Do we have to speak? I say, okay, if you're not driving, fine. Okay.
Before we go, Tom and Naseem, can you just tell our listeners where to find out more information? What's the website or the Facebook page?
wineacademy.tw.
So easy.
That's easy. On Facebook, it's just TWA Wine Lovers, I think.
Yeah, just also Taiwan Wine Academy.
Yeah, also. Wine Academy is easy to find.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Our guests have been Tom and Naseem from the Taiwan Wine Academy, and just search that on the internet. You will find them, and there are wonderful courses coming up in the spring. You've been listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station.